We're going to start by measuring our sweater. So I'm going to find my center. So I'm going to stretch that across. I usually measure from the armpits. And so I'm going to check those seams and then find my center point, and then I'm going to be ready to peel and stick my sticker. So I've got my center point, and then I like to line this up with the armpits as if it's kind of sitting on that line. So I'm going to place that there. I'm going to double check here in a second once I get that placed to make sure that my measurements are pretty much the same on either side. I'll also look at the bottom just to make sure that it is aligned straight across. But usually I can eyeball this pretty quickly, and I mean, it's handmade. It's supposed to be a little wonky at times. So this is looking pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and push that down and get ready to stitch. So I love this yarn is the yarn that I typically use, which is hilarious because it's called I love this yarn. I measure 2 pieces out to my elbow, and then I give a little bit for a tail, and then I clip that off. Sometimes I'll go all the way up to my shoulder, but I just want to make sure I'm not working with too much. Next, I'm going to thread my needle. So I'm going to put the threader through the eye of the needle, and this is a darning needle. So I'm going to push the yarn through the threader and get that little tail going, and then I'm going to pull that right through the eye of the needle. So now that I've got that through, I'm just going to pull through, and that's it. So I've got that threaded, and then I'm going to knot the opposite end because obviously we want that to not go through. There are some no knot techniques, but I find it's not necessary. So I just like to knot mine and get started. So I'm going to do that here. I'm going to double knot it just to make sure it doesn't go through. Now we're ready to start stitching. So I've got my sweater here and I've got the sticker on. So now we're just going to get started. I am going to be doing the reverse chain stitch. So I'm going to come up through the back, and the first thing I'm going to do is create that straight stitch. So I'm going to come up, got my knot catching there, and then I'm going to go really small. I like to hide it a little bit. I don't want it to be too big. So I go pretty small there, and I'm going to go down, and then I'm ready to actually start my chain stitch. So I'm going to go ahead a stitch length, and I'm going to be coming back. As a reminder, this is the reverse chain stitch, so I'm going to go back and loop under that stitch. So once I get that pulled through, I'm going to go under that straight stitch to create my loop, and then I'm going to go right back down into the same hole. And I'm just going to be repeating that pattern where I go up a stitch length and going back and under to create my loops. So there's my first one. I'm going to keep about the same distance. It's about a 1/4 inch. You'll get a feel for it. I've seen some creators where they actually mark on their fingernails where like the width they want just to keep it super consistent. I usually end up in a rhythm and it doesn't look too bad. So play with it, see what you like. Ultimately, you're going to be doing about the same stitch length. So I'm going to finish this up, and then I'll show you a quick note on the back. So I'm going to pull that through here. Yeah, so you can end up catching that tail. Try not to. I usually keep a hold of it with my other hand on the inside. It's not the end of the world if you do, but I'll show you in a bit how to get those cleaned up on the back side. So I'm going to continue doing this. I'm going to be going up a stitch length, coming back, going under that stitch to create my loop, and then back down in the same hole. And I'm going to be following this as if I were writing the word howdy. So I'm going to be going up and then back down. So if you're familiar with hand lettering, I'll be going over on those downstrokes. So I'll go over that so you have a few tips of how to keep it a little less bulky than going straight over the stitch. So I'm going to continue this up, and then I will meet you back to do the crossover so you can see what I'm talking about. So now we're ready to cross over. So I've made that loop as if I were writing it, and I'm actually going to go in between that stitch that I already have there. So I'm going to be going through the middle of that, and this is going to help reduce some of that bulk. You don't have to do it this way. You can go over it, but I like to do this. So I'm going to go up, same as before. I'm going to go under my stitch and then back down into the same hole. It's just going in the center of that is going to reduce some of that volume. So I'm going to pull that through, and I'm actually going to do it for the next stitch here too. So I'm going to come up through that center, and I'm going to go back under my stitch and back down into the same hole. And then on the next one, I will be going just over the line that I already created. I'm going to pull this through. I'm going to go right back down into that same hole. And then on the other side of where I've kind of made that loop, so you can see right there, really close to where my line already is for the lettering, I'm going to come up, and that's going to get me back onto the line and off of the existing stitches. So I'm going to go under here, make sure I'm not going through my yarn and back down. So I'll finish that up, and then we're going to be going just like I said, you'll follow this as if you were actually writing the word, where you're going up and down and over, and try not to overthink it, but just trying to get that fluid motion because it kind of gives the sweater a little more of a fluid look versus doing one letter and then maybe doing the H and then doing the D. Like I like to go through as if I'm actually writing it, and it just creates a better flow and overall look for the sweater. So I'm going to finish this up and I will meet you back for another section just to help clarify some of the things that you may be running into as you're stitching. So now I have most of the word done, but I wanted to come back and meet you. So I've been following, as I said, writing as if I'm actually writing the word. That's how I'm stitching. And so I've come now to the last letter. So I want to show you how I've been connecting these because as I go, I do just a little bit into the next letter. So you can see that here where it's gone a little bit into the Y. And then I'm going to be doing my downstroke to go over that. Similar to how we did for the H, but I just wanted to show this because it does help it connect a bit better, especially because if you don't and you wash it and then you're going to see these gaps. So I highly, highly recommend going a little bit into the next letter just so you don't get those gaps. So I'm going to get this started again. So I'm doing my straight stitch or my reverse chain stitch, and then I'm going to just work down this Y as I normally would. And I'm going to go through the center of that overlap. So I want to show that to you. So I'm going to go up a stitch length. I'm going to go under the stitch. Oh, this is a good example too. So I've actually caught some of my sweater there. Don't panic if this happens. You're just going to push it down when you go back down for the stitch. So I'm going to try to get it there to the base a little bit, and then I'm just going to continue stitching. I'm not going to stress about this. So I'm going to go under that straight stitch. And again, make sure you don't go through your actual yarn. And now, as I'm going down into this hole, I'm going to try to make sure that I grab that little bit of the knit that's come through, and it'll push it right back through. It'll be no big deal. So I'm going to pull that through, and then I'll show you how I'm going to continue down this downstroke of the Y. Okay, so I've gotten that pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and come up in the center of where I've overlapped from the D into the Y. So I'm going to go up through that center, and then just like we did for the H, I'm going to continue going back and under that stitch and then straight back down. Again, this just helps it be less bulky. You could go straight over that. I just don't like the volume that it gives it, so I prefer to do it this way. So I'm going to go back down, and then again, I'm going to be going on the very opposite side of that overlap from the D, really close to that. So then I'm going to come up and finish that overlay. And then I am going to stitch through this really quickly and come back to show you how we're going to finish it off. So I'm ready to do another overlay. I'm actually going to go above this and put my straight stitch into the center of this hole, or like right, I'm sorry, not the center, like right above it. So I'm going to push that through. I'm actually going to be creating a whole new line for the downward stroke of the end of the Y. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to come up a stitch length, but I'm actually going to be going into that center where that overlay is. So you see where I'm coming up through the middle of that stitch. And so I'm going to do that again. I'm going to go under the straight stitch and then back down into that center piece, and then I'll be going on the opposite side. So this is how I've done all of the overlaps, all of the overlays as I've gotten like through an upstroke and then downstroke for the letters. This is typically how I'm working it. And I'll do the same when I cross over for that Y. And then just a note on that like little loopy loop there at the end, when you get into a small like curve like that, I typically go like half size with my stitches. So right here you can see my stitches are pretty even, going about a 1/4 inch. When I get down to the bottom of that twisty piece of the Y, I'm going to go about half of that just to make sure that I get a curve and it doesn't look more like triangular, just kind of like boxy. I want it to actually have that curve. And to do that, I just make my stitches smaller. So just one more note, and then I'll meet you back. I have one more overlay, and then we'll be ready to wash it off. So we're done stitching, and now it's time for my favorite part. You're going to soak your sticker off just by pushing it into the water. Oh my gosh, this is so satisfying. I like to rinse mine with a kitchen sink if I'm being totally honest. I will let it soak for a little bit, and then if I see any dark marks behind it, I will go ahead and use a sprayer. Typically, I'm using warm water. I've heard both. I've heard warm and cold. just make sure you get the sticker totally dissolved. That's the most important piece. If you see any pieces, just let it soak a little bit longer, give it a little more of a spritz. It will dissolve, I promise. And once I've given that some time to soak, then I'll be ready to dry it and finish the back. So we've gotten it all dried and everything, all the stickers off. So now I'm ready to finish the back. This is totally optional. I'm going to turn this inside out. And actually, I see a couple threads. So I'm going to fix these threads. I'm going to tuck those back in. And then I am going to put on a sulky tender touch. So again, I'm just weaving those back in using the whipped effect that we went over in our stitch session. And I'm going to grab the sulky tender touch. So this has, gosh, it's got one side that's super, super soft, so you'll know exactly which side, and then another side that's pretty rough. The rough side is going to go against your stitches, so that soft side is against the skin. So if you do have a little that's wearing this without a shirt underneath it, it's not, the stitches aren't going to bother them. It also just helps secure your stitches, so I like it for that effect too. So I'm just going to measure this out. I think it's like maybe a quarter, half an inch outside of your design. I find it does iron on better to your actual yarn than it does the knit. So don't go too far outside of your design. And I'm just going to cut this into a little block. You could get a little bit closer to the design if you want, but I find a rectangle is fine. So I'm going to cut that out and then I'm just going to be grabbing an iron. This is very similar to any other kind of iron on. You're just going to grab your iron and have it adhere to it with the heat. We'll check the edges and then we will be done. So I'm going to go over that pretty quickly here. It doesn't take too long and then I'll just check the edges, make sure that nothing's peeling off. And once I do that, it's going to be ready to go. So once you have your edges looking good, this one looks pretty good, you can turn it right side out and you have your finished piece. I was so excited to see this. I love this on the brown. I cannot wait to see yours. And here's the final sweater. Please reach out if you have any questions. I so enjoyed making this with you. Happy stitching! Key takeaways. Always wash your garment or fabric before stitching. Use the colors and stitches that best reflect your style. And to avoid lines on lighter threads, be sure to dissolve your water-soluble stabilizer completely. This may mean soaking overnight. Leave a long enough tail for weaving on the inside of your sweater and use a whip technique to secure. For soft backing and to reduce snags, try adding the sulky tender touch to the inside of the sweater. Wash inside out in a delicates bag to prevent damage. Laying flat to dry will also help.